Thank you, Your Holiness. President? Yes, sir.
I've had the pleasure of being in your company now 5 times and hearing your words of wisdom, and I've had an opportunity also to read your books. Your profession of the core values of the United States are most appreciated by me: the life, liberty, freedom, democracy, pursuit of happiness. Those concepts came about during the Age of Enlightenment, and one man that was our 3rd president, who's also a native Virginian, Thomas Jefferson, he professed the same thing. One statement he said for us educators, if a nation expects to be ignorant and free in a state of civilization, it expects what never was or never will be. Could you give us some advice of, as educators, wishing to have a nation that is not ignorant and free in a state of civilization? How do we convince those individuals that you mentioned that may wish to remain uneducated, who may wish to remain in more traditional aspects? How do we break that bond that they may voluntarily or involuntarily have? How do we break those chains of the lack of freedom that they have so that they would like to have the pursuit of education?
I think there are, as far as I notice, there are 2 categories. One category is some native people. I notice in Latin America, it's some. One time I was in Colombia or something, Peru, or I don't know, one country. There are some indigenous people come to see me, and they are very much concerned about the preservation of their own culture, their own identity, and for that reason, they prefer remain isolated. Then a similar sort of the indigenous people, like they call such as yes, in New Zealand you see the Maori people, and then also the Samiland people. Sometimes people call Laplander. In northern Scandinavian country. So now, for example, the Samiland people in Norway, in northern Norway, they're thoroughly educated through Norwegian language and thoroughly educated. But at the same time, you see, they carry preservation of their own identity, their own culture, their own language also. So they. I have sort of strong sort of view that the Samiland's method for preservation of their own identity, their own culture through modern education is the right one. In America also, there's some small pockets of native Indians. On one occasion I met some of their representatives. They are very much concerned about preservation of their own language and their own identity. It is right. But then I asked, how many population? On one occasion, one say their own tribe, about 2,000, 3,000, like that. And very difficult to preserve. And then also, often I ask such indigenous people whether they have script or not. In many cases, no script, just oral. So then I suggested to them that you must have a script, written script, then Romanized script, if traditionally no written script, then must invent some script. So with modern education and preserve their own culture, their own identity. Then within ancient culture, heritage, I think it is really worthwhile to make distinction. As far as Tibetan is concerned, right from the beginning, you see, our main concern and effort is preservation of Tibetan culture. But within the culture, some form of culture, aspects of the aspects of culture, the social sort of creation, the social condition change. Then these will change, have to change. No use to preserve. One aspect of culture, heritage, is something very useful. So that culture we can preserve because there is reasons. And if we explain properly, then people realize it is something useful to preserve. So that kind of culture really worthwhile to preserve. And some cultural heritage actually, according to the reality, outdated. There's no use to preserve. So some, even religious as a tradition, most these, because of the ancient religion, you see, come at the time of, say, because of the, more than 1,000 years ago. So the religious, Buddhism also is some concept, you see, they develop according to the existing social system. So that part, now the social system change. The social sort of way of life change. Then some sort of rules which you see mentioned at that time according to the social sort of system. Then these, I think, should change. Some occasion I express. For example, in India. Now, India, I usually consider my second home. Now, last 50 years, now 51 years, I live in India. Then my body survived with Indian rice and Indian dal. And my mind, the Indian, sort of was a ancient Indian thought. Buddhism come from India. So I can see, I usually consider, these last year, you see, we carried 50th anniversary since we come to India. So there's some occasion I described, I'm son of India, in the sense, as I mentioned earlier, this body survived by Indian food, and my mind is filled by Indian ancient thought. So it's actually the son of India. But some of the Chinese communist ear, you see, this sounds very, very negative. So they accuse me like that. So in India, sometimes I express some of their custom, which essentially outdated. Sometimes the human rights concept, according to their 1,000-year-old tradition, sometimes a little conflict. Then we must accept the universal value. Some of the traditional custom have to sacrifice. That's how I feel. And then another category, deliberately, I think political reason. That's mainly power reason. And sometimes deliberately, because of that, try to isolate.